All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the channel and welcome to your November 28th stimulus check update. Will you get a stimulus check by December 31st? Well, we will find out, won't we? We're also going to be talking about a little bit about coronavirus, and we're going to be talking about two candidates that will be in the Biden administration cabinet that will be supposedly next year for the presidency, as these two people could change the way the economy functions, as well as the stimulus checks and further money coming in from that. So we're going to check out a couple of articles, then we're going to talk about some new candidates coming along that may change some things up quite a bit. So time's running out for the U.S. government to approve a second coronavirus relief package, with Congress adjourned until next week as usual because they're just on vacation like once a week. It's really amazing. And the Biden administration focusing on assuming office in January. So where does it leave Americans anxiously awaiting for another federal stimulus check? The cash payments that were initially distributed this spring, for now, stuck in limbo. To be sure, lawmakers could still pass a scaled-down stimulus bill when they return to Washington, D.C. on November 30th, but most economists believe it's unlikely to match the $2.2 trillion coronavirus aid relief that was signed into law in March and provided 1,200 checks to most Americans, as the Republicans lately were arguing for a $1.8 trillion stimulus package, and the Democrats wanted another $2.2 trillion stimulus package, as if there's really that much of a difference when you're talking in that many billions. But fair enough, I suppose. Democrats and Republicans remain far apart on several key issues, such as providing hundreds of billions in funding for states and cities that have been hit by declining tax revenues amid the coronavirus pandemic. And the Democrats, they want to give it to certain cities. But either way, I mean, the stimulus package is really not just about the $1,200 stimulus checks and the $500 per child up to a certain amount. But it's also about PPE, it's also about unemployment and loans for small businesses as well. So there's really a lot that goes into the stimulus package. Even if Congress passes an aid bill early next month, it could take weeks for the IRS to electronically deposit the funds into people's bank accounts, much less mail out millions of paper checks. It took between 1 and 3 months for most Americans to get their so-called economic impact payment after the bill was signed into law this spring. However, some people still haven't got their check from that originally. And it did say that it took 3 months for that to go through, but I certainly remember my stimulus hitting the bank account actually really quickly. It really didn't take that long for me. Maybe I was one of the lucky ones. I'm not sure. That would leave many households and businesses hanging, with millions set to lose their unemployment benefits by year end, and nationwide eviction moratoriums lapsing in the new year. The number of Americans applying for jobless aid rose for the second week in a row, a sign that the economy is not particularly recovering. Millions of Americans are heading for a bleak winter as safety nets expire, and as we go into additional lockdowns again, which really hurts the small businesses. It's really like the large businesses like Walmart or Amazon and things like that are actually gaining revenue, whereas the small businesses are the ones that are impacted the most from this. Rather than try to break the months-long impasse on stimulus funding, experts think Congress is more likely to focus on passing legislation to finance the federal government after December 11th, averting a government shutdown. So once again, essentially the people get put on the wayside. And it's really not surprising. The first check, it seemed like they came together very quickly on it. And the second one, they just kept delaying and delaying and delaying. Which, again, is just not a surprise at all, considering that the Republicans were vying for a new presidency, the Democrats were trying for a new presidency, or at least the existing presidency with the Republicans. And if either one passed a stimulus package, it would look like the other one effectively lost. And, oh, look, the Republicans gave us a new package, so I'll vote for them this time. Or, oh, look, the Democrats passed a new package, I'll vote for them this time. And they really couldn't afford that either way. But meanwhile, the people suffer and suffer and suffer. Deutsche Bank economists Peter Hooper and Matthew Lazzetti think Congress could thrash out a slimmed-down stimulus package early next year. Janet Yellen, who is reported to be President-elect Joe Biden's choice for Treasury Secretary, would likely push for a speedy bill, the Economist told investors this week. However, once again, it's still got to go through the Senate, and both the Republicans and Democrats still have to agree on it. So it really doesn't matter what administration comes in or really what cabinet members necessarily, they still have to agree on the package either way. Still, Yellen wouldn't be taking on the role until the Biden administration is ushered in on January 20th and would also require approval from politically divided Senate. So again, the Senate is still going to have to pass it regardless. And it looks like more Republicans were voted into the House and Senate this year. And it may go to a Democratic presidency, but there was quite a bit of Republicans that were actually voted for representatives and senators. So it's really not going, it's still incredibly divided, which is a good thing. But in this case of the stimulus package, it's just not helping us. Now, the two people I want to talk for the Biden administration that is quite frankly likely to be the next presidency. And the reason I say that is just because Biden not only won the popular vote, he won the electoral votes. And I know there are still currently some lawsuits going on and some recountings going on. But quite frankly, it's just not looking good. It's just not looking good for the Trump presidency. And it's looking more like Biden. Also, Trump dropped some of the lawsuits, and also, I believe, Pennsylvania lawmakers essentially dropped the lawsuit as well, or something like that, or dismissed it federally, or maybe the state. Either way, most of them are just not working out in terms of a recount. So, Janet Yellen was the previous Federal Reserve chairman, or chairwoman in this case. And I'm paraphrasing, but she said at one time that, for this next cabinet pick, I shall be Treasury Secretary this time, that she learned from being the Federal Reserve chairwoman that she was not spending enough money, that the Fed was not giving enough money. They weren't, basically the country was just not spending enough money, and that when she gets in there, she's going to spend a lot of money this time. So that could be good for the people, as interest rates are pretty low right now. The other person I want to talk about is Andrew Yang. He's the only candidate at the moment for the U.S. Department of Commerce. It's up here, Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang, in case you don't remember, was a Democratic nominee for presidency, and he was in the debates, etc. And I believe he dropped out in something like February of 2020, somewhere around there. But he was an interesting candidate. I actually kind of liked this guy. The thing he's most known for is the $1,000 a month UBI, the Universal Basic Income, where no matter how much or how little money you make, you would receive a $1,000 check per month from the government. Now, some other countries do this. Some people claim socialism, and I'm not really here to debate that. That's simply what he was known for. And the idea was that if you were already on some kind of benefit program, whether you're disabled or something like that, from the government, if the $1,000 was more than what you were getting currently, it could just be replaced with that. Or if your current disability was more than $1,000 a month, you would just opt out of the $1,000 a month. Which, in general, it's not a particularly bad idea, as people will just get the money and they'll immediately pay off bills, or they'll immediately put the money into the local economy or go spend it somewhere, and the money's just going to flow around like it always has in that sense. Some people argue that, of course, that could create lazy people that don't want to work because of it, but it is on top of your salary too, so I think working might still have that same you might still have that same, most people will still have the same desire to work because it's on top of the pay that you're already getting, so you would just get more. But either way, so he would be a part of the Department of Commerce. Now, this article is from June 2nd, 2020. Kamala Harris and Andrew Yang renew a call for a $2,000 a month stimulus check during the COVID crisis. And this was what it was just sort of when it was in the middle of it all, I guess June. And again, it's a little while ago, but the Monthly Economic Crisis Support Act, which would give up to $2,000 a month for anyone earning up to $120,000 a year. The monthly payment begins to phase out starting at $100,000 a year. Married couples who fight jointly would get $4,000, and you would receive $2,000 for each dependent. So that's a lot of money. I really don't know how how America could actually afford that. Again, the way that Andrew Yang put it with the $1,000 a month was that the money's just going to go right back into the economy anyway. But most people are probably not going to be hodling it in, or holding it into their bank accounts for very long. Most people are just going to spend it right away, whether it's just spending cash for you or whether you actually need it to pay off your bills. It's just going to go right back into the economy. So it's not like all the money is just flowing into everybody and then we're just going to run out of money. It's still just being tossed around, if you will. But that does seem like a pretty insane amount of money. So a maximum of 3 dependents. So if you were married, you'd be getting $4,000 a month. If you had a kid, it'd be $6,000, $2,000, $8,000. So it's an incredible amount of money. But he would be the Department of Commerce. So I've heard him even say that, again, with the $2,000 a month during the crisis thing, so he might be able to convince Biden or convince the rest of the administration to start trying to work on legislation towards a $1,000 a month or a $2,000 a month for the duration of COVID at the very least, which I think would be very good because a lot of people are super far behind right now. So Taiwanese American entrepreneur and former presidential contender Andrew Yang could be the next Secretary of Commerce. The news agency published a list of potential cabinet choices for President-elect Joe Biden and is sworn in. While the report mentioned several candidates in some categories, the top Commerce Department position, Yang, was the only name. So he's like the only person who's being considered for the U.S. Commerce Secretary. I've also heard Andrew Yang also potentially could be in a new role, like a new cabinet position, in the same way that with the other guy is basically going to be for like a liaison for climate control. Off the top of my head at the moment. But Yang could essentially be in a new cabinet position as like a Secretary of Technology. Because another thing, again, he was known for the $1,000 a month, but the reason why I really liked Yang, I sort of got off track there. The reason why I actually kind of liked Yang as a candidate was that when asked questions, he was on like the Joe Rogan show and he was on many different podcasts and stuff like that. You can look it up. When asked questions, he actually had answers for them. And it wasn't just like a yes, we can, or like a make America great again, which means nothing. Like neither of those things actually mean anything. Whether you like those candidates, whether you like Obama or Trump, it doesn't really matter. I think we can both agree that yes, we can, and make America great again. Both, it really means nothing. It's very subjective, and it means the same thing. It means a different thing to every person. Every person would have a different meaning of what MAGA means or what yes, we can means. It's just it's political nonsense for people to repeat. To remember their candidate. And it's a good thing to win an election, but they honestly mean nothing. When was America not great? Was it ever great? It doesn't mean anything, and it means different things to every person. He did have a "Make America Think Harder" slogan, which you could argue that that's in the same boat. However, he just had he had actual solutions to things, and he realizes that the trucker industry, for example, and many other industries will be going under and be going away as technology comes. So as self-driving trucks come, many truckers are just going to plain and simple lose their jobs. I mean, we have robotic burger flippers. Everything is going sort of robotic, and more people are losing their jobs. And if you owned a trucking company and someone came along to you and said, hey, we can just automate all of your trucks. Now, this is probably not going to be anytime soon. It might be 5 years, it might be 10 years, it might be 20 years. But sooner or later, if you didn't have to pay for a ton of truckers, you would be making so much money. I mean, first of all, a trucker can only drive a certain amount of hours a day. A robotic truck could drive 24 hours a day. The only thing I would see that leading to is more gas station attendants, so they can actually fill up the electronic trucks and it can drive away. That's about it. And so he was going to give $1,000 a month to everybody in order for people to learn new skills, which is a whole thing in itself. But either way, second stimulus check, President-elect Biden's thoughts on $1,200 payments. Despite an aid package of direct payments being a priority before the election, the White House has shown little interest in pushing things forward. And in Congress, Senate and House leadership are on completely different pages. The Trump administration is reportedly stepping back from negotiations as they apparently don't care anymore on a new stimulus package, leaving it to Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to revive long-stalled talks. Coronavirus relief will be one of the first things on his plate when he takes office in January 2021. Biden has long pushed for additional aid, and this week said Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer know my views on stimulus. On Monday, Biden's transition team denied a report that he was pushing leaders to agree to a smaller stimulus package in order to get immediate relief. So, trying to push for a large stimulus package as well. And with the Democratic presidency, I can see them pushing for a lot, and that's why I say with Janet Yellen and Andrew Yang that they really want to spend a lot. And just because he would be the Secretary of Commerce doesn't mean that he can get that done. Again, the Senate and House have to do it, but it could mean a bigger push to do that. Also in the news, with coronavirus, Trump is furious because he thinks Biden will get the credit for coronavirus vaccine developments, report says. So President Trump is furious at the prospect that President-elect Joe Biden may get credit for the coronavirus vaccines developed during his presidency, which I really don't think either president should honestly get credit for coronavirus vaccines. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of work involved in it, but honestly, it was really like Pfizer and these various corporations that make it and put all the technology and research and legwork into it, and also going to profit off of them greatly. Apparently, they're like $35 a dose. You have to have 2 doses, and they're going to need billions of doses. So you can see why they wanted to push through that pretty quickly. I mean, I would too. But I really don't think either president. I find this actually kind of silly, just because I wouldn't really thank Trump if I got a vaccine. I never really thank a president for doing that. I mean, they're not a scientist, like they didn't make it. But whatever. 2 people have spoken to the president, told the Daily Beast that he's getting upset at the idea Biden will steal the plaudits from him when a vaccine rolls out in the new administration. You got my promise, Trump. You got my promise that I don't think anybody. I'm not thanking either president for it. I'm thanking, I guess, these probably utterly corrupt corporations that are making it. If you got to thank anybody, I guess. 2 vaccine candidates, one developed with assistance from Trump's vaccine effort, Operation Warp Speed, I bet, have emerged with their developers confident of more than 90% efficacy. And moving on to additional coronavirus news. The FAA supports first mass air shipment of COVID-19 vaccine. So they're pushing them on out. Excuse me. The Federal Aviation Administration says it has supported the first mass air shipment of a COVID-19 vaccine. As a result of the historic pace of vaccine development through Operation Warp Speed, I bet, and careful logistics planning, the FAA today is supporting the mass air shipment of a vaccine. Not that I don't support a vaccine, but Operation Warp Speed, it should be like Operation Warp Speed profits. I'm sorry. Like $35 a dose times 2, $70 $20 a dose for billions of doses. I mean, that's a lot of billions. That's a lot of billions. I mean, if we could count the billions, I've ran out of fingers. I can't count the billions that they're going to make off this Operation Warp Speed profit. Let's call it what it is. FAA said it established a COVID-19 air transport team in October to ensure safe, expeditious, and efficient transport of vaccines. It said that several vaccines needed to be transported with dry ice, and it was working with manufacturers, air carriers, and airports to provide guidance on regulations and safety transport large quantities. Pfizer's COVID vaccine, for example, requires large amounts of dry ice to keep it at approximately negative 75 degrees Celsius. In addition to mitigating safety risks related to the safe transport of vaccines, the FAA is ensuring around-the-clock air traffic services to keep air cargo moving and prioritizing flights carrying cargo such as vaccines and personnel critical to the nation's response to and recovery from COVID-19. Advisors to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention on Friday called an emergency meeting for Tuesday to vote on who they recommend should be the first to get a coronavirus vaccine once is authorized. The CDC's Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices wants to have advice out to the public ahead of any decision from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration about emergency authorization of a vaccine. And Pfizer has applied to the FDA and EUA for its vaccine, and biotech company Moderna is expected to do so soon. So in terms of who gets the vaccine first, I would imagine it's just elderly, sick, hospital patients, doctors, nurses, hospital personnel, things like that, I would imagine. But I don't suspect that there's going to be much of a shortage of these. There needs to be a vaccine for various diseases. I'm definitely thankful for polio and just like all rubella and all of those vaccines that have virtually eliminated those diseases over time. But I mean, quite frankly, they're going to make a lot of money off these. They always are. So they're not going to have a shortage of them. It's just not going to be the way that it is. So no stimulus checks yet. Are we going to get a stimulus check before December 31st? I don't know. You decide. Do you think it's going to be before December 31st? Put it down in the comments below. Tell me what you guys think. Tell me, guys, what situation you're in. Who's responsible for preventing this stimulus check? Is it the Republicans or was it the Democrats? The Democrats wanted a $2.2 trillion. The Republicans only wanted a 1.8, and neither side would move. Is it both their fault? Either way, that's all I have for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and as usual, I will see you guys next time.